I am going to keep that poll up for just a second. If you haven't had a chance, feel free to either say if you've ever heard or ever seen a screech owl before. But I'm going to get going just so we start on time. My name is Ellen Holste. I am the Community Program Manager at Pierce Cedar Creek Institute. So welcome to our virtual creature feature today. I'm really excited for this one. I love owls. They're just so beautiful. So I'm going to hand it off to Amy Cherry. Amy Cherry is works for Battle Creek Outdoor Education Center, and she's got a special guest with her today, and I'll let her introduce her special guest.
Hello, everybody. As Ellen said, my name is Amy Cherry from the Outdoor Ed Center. So, Ellen, let's go back to those questions. Do we have like the number of people who have seen or heard owls?
We do. So I am sharing your poll results on Zoom, but we have a lot of people on Facebook that have also seen owls, but most people have heard an owl, so 84% that responded, and most people have also seen an owl, 92% of those that responded. And I have a lot of people on Facebook that also say that they have seen and heard owls, even heard owls in their own backyard. So that's really cool.
Nice. All right. So I think oftentimes we have all heard owls or seen them, maybe seen them in a zoo or in some sort of program or captivity. Maybe you've seen one out in the wild. I have to say, personally, I have only seen a handful of owls in the wild, yet I have heard many, many, many. Where I live here at the Outdoor Education Center, I hear them almost nightly at some points of the year. Screech owls, barred owls, great horned owls. We have a lot of owls on this property. So, but who I have here with us today is Screech, and Screech is one of our animal ambassadors. We have several animal ambassadors, and he is an eastern screech owl. And I have a slide presentation, so we're gonna I'm gonna use that as well as talking. Let's hear a little bit about Screech, in that we have had him since November of 2018. So we've had him for 2 years. He was born the spring of 2018, and we have him because the person who does rehabilitation, who also checks on our great horned owl and our red-tailed hawk, she does rehabilitation, and she needed to find a home for Screech. And she asked us if we'd like him as an animal ambassador to work with our school programs. And we said yes. So that's why we have him. He's 2.5. And we're going to find out a little bit about what he eats in just a minute and how heavy he is. And what he does here is he does exactly what we're doing right now, which is working with programs and kids. When we're live and in person, with people on site, we have him on the glove, which is the picture you see down here when we're doing programs. So let's learn a little bit about Screech. So what does he eat? And you might know those answers as well. I'm not sure how many kids we have out there or adults, but he eats small rodents. Here is a small mouse, and he eats chicks. And out in the wild, they would also eat probably small snakes, large insects, that sort of thing. All kinds of rodents out in the wild, moles, chipmunks, that sort of thing. His primary diet here is mice and chicks. So an interesting thing about owls and other birds of prey is that when they eat their prey, the prey has fur or feathers, bones that don't digest in the owl. So it gathers in their internally, and then it comes back up out their mouth as an owl pellet. Now think about it. How many of you have seen an owl pellet? I bet a lot of you have. Maybe at school. It's one of the ways when you're hiking out in the woods to figure out where an owl is. If you see at the base of a tree owl pellets, or even things that look like this, an owl pellet that's fallen apart, that's going to give you a clue that there's an owl roosting in that tree above you. So we have two different pellets here. We have a great horned owl pellet, and then the eastern screech owl pellet. You can see different sizes because they're different size animals, different size birds. But you can see as we break them apart, you can see this one has fur, some pretty large bones, and then you can see with the owl pellet or the screech owl pellet, it's just a lot smaller bones. I happen to have right here a great horned owl pellet, so you can see about what size that is. An eastern screech owl pellet is a lot smaller. It's about the size of the tip of my finger. I don't have one here. I've been kind of waiting for him to cough one up, but he hasn't. All righty. Here is inside of a pellet. This happens to be a barred owl pellet. And you can see this is broken up quite a bit, but you can see the fur, and actually you can see the bits of bone in there. This came out of the pellet. It is the jawbone of a squirrel. So this would be definitely give you a clue that is a larger owl than a screech owl, because a screech owl would not be able to have this large of a item in its inside and cough that back up. So that's about food and pellets. Ellen, are there anything on the chat about that, or anyone have any questions about food or pellets or that sort of thing?
Someone made a comment saying that they found a pellet at Pierce Cedar Creek Institute, so we must have owls out there, which is great. I have heard some owls out there.
Nice.
I had a question for you though, in the sense of, it sounds like our eastern screech owls may eat different things than some of our other owls. Do they only eat mice, or do they eat, for example, insects, or would they eat any vegetation?
Right. So an eastern screech owl in the wild would eat lots of different small rodents. It would eat mice, meadow vole, chipmunks, other kinds of moles, small snakes, large insects. It would not eat plant material. They are definitely predators. They eat only other animals.
Would they eat, we do have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Somebody heard that the screech owls are very fierce hunters, and they can actually take down mourning doves. Have you ever heard of them taking down mourning doves?
I have not yet. It wouldn't surprise me. They definitely owls and hawks, a lot of predators will eat other birds, obviously, because it eats a chick. And so that doesn't surprise me. Hadn't heard that one, but yeah.
There was another question. So it sounds like most owls, or all owls, are all carnivores, so they all eat meat, correct?
Correct.
And so do they all regurgitate pellets?
Yes, they do. A hawk will do the same. We think of it more of as an owl, yet the hawk, probably eagles, any other kind of raptor will do the same.
And one more question. Do they swallow their prey whole, or do they actually chew it up at all?
That is a great question. They actually use their beaks to rip it apart. So they're going to use their talons, whether this is in the wild or even in captivity. They're going to hold that prey with their talons and use their very sharp beaks to pull at it and eat it bit by bit. And then they wouldn't chew it. They would just pull it into smaller pieces that they can swallow. Awesome. Good question. Really good question. And sometimes you can find, like if you're out in the woods and you find like a rabbit that's partially eaten, you may have just kind of scared off a larger raptor that was actually eating that that animal. Now, unless it was able to grab that animal and fly away with it, which does happen as well. So good
It
question.
sounds like they eat lots of different things. It sounds like snakes, they'll eat squirrels depending on the type of owl.
Mhm.
They'll eat some insects, they'll definitely eat mice. And it sounds like though, do we need to be careful when we are dissecting them and looking at them? Do we need to be like, what type of sanitary things do we need to do while doing that when we're looking at their
Or a
pellets?
pellet, I mean,
Yeah.
looking at a pellet. Yeah, so a pellet, what you should do is, if you're going to take it home and dissect it, is to put it on a cookie sheet or a piece of foil in a cookie sheet and put it in the oven. I'm not exactly sure what temperature. I'm just going to say 200 degrees for a while. Look it up, Google it. How long should you bake or heat up a pellet to make sure it's sanitized before you actually take it apart?
And where would we find these owl pellets? So if we were out looking for owls and owl pellets, would
Yeah.
we find these owl pellets under their nests, or would we find them as they flew? Would they then regurgitate them while they're flying?
They're not going to regurgitate them while they're flying. They're going to be mostly at the base of a tree where there is their nesting tree, or where the cavity is, their roosting spot. That is where they're going to find them. And that's why I said, if you're hiking along and you find a spot where you find them or you see those pellets, start looking around, because there's probably an owl or a screech owl very close, or a larger owl very close by. Good questions.
One more comment, one more question before we move on from what they eat. Someone
Yeah.
made a comment of, so if you are going to dissect owl pellets, it's great that you definitely need to put them in the oven, heat them up. But another person mentioned that if you are allergic to fur, a lot of times they do have a lot of fur in them, so you just need to be careful with that. But Mary did ask, will they eat dead animals, or do they just eat live animals?
That is a great question. So out in the wild, they're going to eat live animals. They're going to hunt. They are a predator. Here in captivity, our animals all eat dead animals. So you saw the mouse. That is us literally getting ready to put that into Screech's cage, and it is already a dead animal. So out in the wild, they're going to hunt live animals and eat them.
So we've already
Good
had
question.
people look this up on probably Google or whatever, and
Yeah.
people are letting us know, FYI, wrap pellet in foil, bake for 40 minutes at 325. So
There we go.
according to the International Owl Center. I love that you guys are Googling this for us. Thank
Perfect.
you.
That's what's so wonderful about the internet right now, or at all times, is you can find that information out. And if you're not sure, just look it up. Good question. I hadn't thought about if you're allergic to fur, to be really careful. That's a great point. And probably heating it up probably doesn't take that allergen away that I'm aware of. So good questions. Great questions.
I think we should move on to the next part.
Okay, here we go. So one of the things I asked was, how much does Screech weigh? And you can see on this red desk here, there is this actual stand on top of a scale as part of our program to keep the animals healthy. We weigh them periodically to make sure we're feeding them enough, and that they stay at the weight they should be. Kind of like, I think about back in the olden days when mothers used to weigh their babies and have actual baby scales in their homes to make sure they were feeding them enough. So we weigh him, and right now Screech weighs about 4 ounces, which is the nice healthy weight of a screech owl. He's a very healthy screech owl. So you can see this little picture of a milk carton. For those of you who go to school or will be going back to school and have lunch at school, this is your typical milk carton that you have at school, which is 8 ounces. So you take half of that milk out, and that is how much this screech owl weighs. I think sometimes, wow, that's it? 4 ounces? Most of what you see is feathers. He is just not a very big animal, and most of it is feathers, making him fluffy. So yeah, pretty exciting. Okay. All right, so camouflage. That was one of the advertisements of this program, is they are masters of camouflage. And this is such a great picture of Screech. This is Screech that we're holding up against an oak tree. And you can see how well they are camouflaged with their color, the pattern on their feathers, and even the silhouette of the owl and its shape blended into that tree so well. So a couple of things that you can really see here, and we can see, we'll look at Screech here closer, is the dark bars on his feathers, and just even some of the outlines of his feathers around his face, down the middle of his face, and his feathers. And then you look at the bark of that tree, how just so similar that is. It's really quite amazing. I am going to pop out of this so that you can see Screech a little closer, and see how his colors are really good. You've got the bars on his coloring here, and on his wings over here, and look how he's following me around. And see, you'll even see the coloring around the side of his face. We're gonna go right over here. Good job, buddy. And how so well blended in he would be against that tree. Nice job.
So Amy, you said that that one tree was an oak tree that he was blending in. So does that mean he likes to live in oak forests?
It's just where we are has a ton of oak trees. And do screech owls live in oak forests? Absolutely, because here at the Outdoor Center, you hear them all the time. Now, we live here, so it's really kind of at dusk and into the evening that we hear them. And so yes, they definitely would live in oak forest, but they would also live in other forests. They're going to live where they can find a nesting cavity and they can find food. So I don't think they're necessarily picky about what kind of forest.
I did miss a question from before. Somebody was asking for food, whether they would eat small animals such as kittens.
I'm not going to say no.
Okay, so be concerned about our kittens if there's a large owl around.
Right, a screech owl, and that might be a little big, but a great horned owl, a hawk, absolutely. Small dogs, absolutely. Yeah, they don't distinguish like, oh, that's someone's pet, I'm not going to go for it. That's not the way it is. All right, so what helps them to camouflage? That coloring, the pattern, and then those trees. Good. Okay, they're also expert nighttime hunters. They are nocturnal, so they are active at night. That's what nocturnal means. They're active at night. They hunt at night. You hear them at night. They socialize at night. During the daytime, they are in their little nesting cavities, sleeping away, and really protecting themselves from predators who might get them, like a bigger bird. A hawk or an owl would easily eat a screech owl. All right, so there's 3 things that really make them amazing hunters and good nighttime hunters, but also hunters, is they have very large eyes. They have large eyes, they have good hearing, and they have silent feathers. So we're going to talk about all of those things. So their eyes. Their eyes are so large, they fit exactly in their eye socket. So right now, I want you to feel around your face, like at your eyebrows, you can feel a bone, and down here, you can feel hard bone. That's your eye socket, and your eye is in there. And your eye, and I don't know if you can see mine. I'm gonna go off here for a second. So I want you to do what I'm gonna do. So I want you to look to the left. I want you to look right, look up, look down. Your eyeballs move around inside of your head as you're doing that. Owls cannot do that. Their eyes are so big and so tight in that bone, that eye socket, that they have to move their entire head to look around. All right.
Which Screech is doing right now for us.
Which he is doing right now for us. And I'm sitting a little bit behind him, so I've got to try and get him to look at the screen, which he can do. We're going to have the pink part of the pen over here. So he looks over here, so you can see him a whole lot better. So for him to see, he needs to move his whole head. Whereas for us to see back here, even if my head is straight, I can move my eyeballs and I can see my hand way over here. Whereas if my eyes only looked forward, I would have to turn to look that. All right. So that's something that's really important. Their eyes are very big. That's one of the things that makes them good nighttime hunters. Keen hearing. So, your ears and an owl's ears, bird's ears. Here's my eye. Actually, I'm going to go off the screen this second. There we go. So if I take, and you do the same, okay? Go like this. I'm going to make a line, and then I'm going to go down a little bit. And there's a hole in my ear, or a hole in my head on both sides, and that's where I hear. It's actually just that hole. The same thing for a bird. If you look and go like a little bit over and a little bit down, that ear is going to be kind of on the side of its face. Hard to see because all those feathers are covering it. Now, with a lot of animals, including us, we have these little flaps that help push sound into our ears. I want you to try something right now. So maybe turn to the people next to you. Screech is watching me. Turn to the people next to you and say, hello. Good job. Hello. And then I want you to take your hands and cup your ears, make them big and go, hello. Now, as you're going, hello, I want you to pull your hands closer and go, hello. And then maybe take them away. Hello. Did it sound different? Yep, I knew it would. So these little flaps help push the sound into my ear. The same thing with an owl. Now you'll see on Screech, Screech's feature happens to have these little tufts, he didn't like that, these little tufts of feathers sticking up. That has nothing to do with hearing. All that is for like, hey, I'm looking bad, like I'm fierce, stay away. What really helps with his hearing is that you'll see that there's kind of a bowl-shaped feathers around his eyes. And those feathers actually help capture the sound and direct them into the ear. So these, oh, good job, buddy. There's little, like, almost like a bowl around his eyes, and the feathers make that bowl to help direct into the ear. Some animals, and I bet you can think of them, have much bigger ear flaps to help direct sound in. Turn to somebody you know and tell them an animal that you know has a big ear flap that helps them to be able to hear really well. Or maybe even throw it into chat. Nice. Okay. Got any chat ones?
I don't have any chat ones, but we do have, oh, I do now. Sorry, I spoke too soon. Cats and dogs and wolves.
Excellent, excellent. Good job.
And I
I'm
know
also
we sometimes like to call these deer ears.
deer ears, yes. Deer, elephants is a perfect example of those big floppy ears. Rabbits have those big ears that they actually can help turn to help be able to hear. So I just wanted to make sure you realize that those feathers are not part of their ears. Their ears are just a hole in their head, and those feathers help direct the sound. Nice.
So maybe you'll get into this for feathers, but I did have a question in the chat about feathers. Do they get more feathers during the winter, or do they change color during the winter?
Oh, nice job. I don't know that answer. They do not change color. The color stays the same. I would guess they would probably add some downy feathers to help keep them warm, because in the summer sometimes they molt and they drop feathers. So good question. I'm not exactly sure. I'm going to go back to this.
Some other animals that people were saying that had those ears were mice, and then Facebook, they said dogs. So
perfect, perfect. I knew you all knew. Good job, everybody. Really good job. So that's the keen hearing. Now, here's a feature that's really amazing, is they are silent flyers. Now, when I say silent, I just mean super quiet compared to other birds. And they need to be such silent flyers. Well, you tell me. You turn to somebody, why would an owl need to be so quiet when it's flying and hunting? Yep, you're right. So that the mice and the things they're hunting don't hear them and skitter away. Good point. So we're going to look at some feathers. So here is a feather of a great horned owl. And this happens to be a flight feather. And you can see all this little, I'm going to call it fringe, that helps it to stay quiet. It also, by doing two things, is it air can go through and it also absorbs sound. Whereas compared to this turkey vulture flight feather, you can see that it's very smooth. So I happen to have, and I'm going to go out of this for a second. I happen to have two different feathers. This happens to be a turkey vulture feather. And I don't know if you'll be able to hear on here, actually hear it. This happens to be a great horned owl feather. And I am doing it just as hard, and you cannot hear it. So it's amazing the difference. All right. Let me go back to here. There we go. So we have those different feathers. Now, this is the great horned owl feather that we were just looking at, as the, and it's hard to see on this slide, the little fringy, but it's there. And then this is the screech owl feather. So this kind of gives you not only, it gives you a really good idea of the difference in the size of those two birds. Both of these flight feathers would have that fringy edge on it, much harder to see than these really up close. But that's what makes it a night silent, we call it silent, a very quiet flyer at night, period. Not flyer at night, but just at any time. Any questions?
They were saying that they could definitely hear the difference between the vulture feather and the owl. So good. There was a question that came up. Jeanette was asking, do all owls have to turn their head to see around them, or just eastern screech owls?
No, all owls. So that is a feature of all owls, is that their eyes are so tight in the socket that they cannot actually move their eyeballs. They have to turn their heads. And that's why sometimes, you know, you might hear people say, oh, an owl can turn their head all the way around. That's not true. They can't, but they can turn it way far back and then so quickly turn it to the other direction back that it almost looks that way. But yes, all owls.
And then Kate was asking, so you mentioned that they are nocturnal, which means that they hunt at night. So
Yes.
how much sleep do they actually need during the day? And is our ambassador getting a little sleep deprived today?
Oh, I do not know how much a bird of prey needs to sleep or rest. And I would say because we're in captivity and he is used to being up and about during the day when we're doing programs and things, and where he actually lives is a kind of a busy spot in the lodge. He's very used to, he's not sleep deprived today. Good question though. I do have a stand in my office, and sometimes during the day, just for socialization, for him, socialization, he's in my office on a stand, and he'll sleep in there. And I can see him all like eyes closed and just kind of sitting there. So,
And I would expect owls to be similar to us in the sense that we don't all need 8-9 hours of sleep or 12 hours, depending upon the person or the child. We all need different amounts of sleep. So I would expect owls to be similar.
yeah, I would too. Don't know the answer of how much sleep they need though, but I bet you someone is Googling it as we speak.
Oh, and if you find out, feel free to put it in the chat.
Please do. We'd like to know. All right. So another feature of birds of prey, and here is Screech's talons, which are these very sharp toenails, and that's what he uses to hold on to a roosting stand, but also to capture the prey, to hold them as they're eating. But the other thing I really like about this picture is that you can see that coloration so well, and those little bars sticking out, to see how it camouflages in it just so perfectly. All right, let's go to nesting cavities, breeding of the birds, and different colorations actually. So out in the wild, they have they live during mating season and taking care of their families in nesting cavities. So here happens to be a picture of 2 eastern screech owls. What do you notice that's different about them? Share it with somebody you're sitting with. Good. They're different colors, aren't they? They are both eastern screech owls. They just happen to be a different coloration. The one right here is a gray eastern screech owl, much like Screech. That is not Screech though, just so you know. And then the other one is the red coloration. Now, at first I was like, wow, boy, you can see that red one so much easier. But then I really started looking at the tree, and I noticed, look at this kind of red rusty color here, red rusty color up here. And I'm like, oh, actually, it really does blend in. They both blend in so well. So you'll notice that this cavity is where they're hanging out. This used to be the spot where a branch was, and that branch probably rotted off, broke off, and there happens to be a hole in there. They also would take the cavities, any cavity they would find that's up high enough, often the cavity that a woodpecker has made looking for food. So it's kind of a cool thing. The other picture is a nesting box made by a human, happens to be our former director, Del Bockert, made this and then spray painted it so it would be camouflaged, and has a little perch on it. And then you can go inside. Now, what's really cool, you might have to look really hard there are actually 2 owls in that picture. Do you see the other one? Good. Yeah, the other one is literally peeking out from inside. The hole to get in is not very big, and they go in and out, and there's one on the perch, and there's one peeking outside. And this was taken in his backyard in Hastings, Michigan. So this is just right in town, actually kind of on the edge of town. They have a creek and some woods, so that's pretty neat. They even, yeah, that was pretty cool.
We do have a question about or related to owl boxes. So Keith was saying he put out an owl box on Wednesday and had a gray screech owl on Saturday, which is amazing.
Oh my gosh.
And so far he only comes out when it starts to get dark. Will he come out during the day? The box, I guess, faces south.
No, it will stay in that box all day and sleeping, chilling out, whatever. It will only come out. Now, I'm going to say that's a gross generalization, and that all of a sudden, if something happened and someone started banging on that box, sure, it will come out. But in general, nope, it will stay in there all day long. That is so amazing, because we've just recently put up a Screech owl box. I haven't seen one yet. So that's really cool. Well, that's cool. Good job. Good job. All right, we're going to peek inside that box. So here's the inside box with a Screech owl sitting on 3 eggs. Now, not at this time of year. This would be in the spring. So their breeding season is, I would say, April. I have it written down. Is April to and into May is their March, maybe March, mid-March to mid-May is breeding season, and then they're gonna lay eggs. They incubate those eggs for, I don't know, 27 to 34 days, so basically a little more than a month, and then they hatch. And so I have to say, this is the cutest thing. I have never seen an owlet before, and I think they are adorable. Of course, I've seen a baby chick. Hey, thumbs up, or look to somebody you're sitting with and let them know, have you seen a baby chick? Like a brand new baby chick that's really cute and little fuzzy. So same thing. I'm so happy. I bet you a lot of you have seen baby chicks. So these are adorable. And what makes me understand better is that they have to be cared for by their parents until they're able to fly and be on their own, because they just have this fuzzy downy feathers. They don't have flight feathers yet. So it takes a while. So the mom and the dad would be bringing food to them in this nesting box.
So that actually brings up a good question. People have been asking, are there any animals that prey on owls? So I'd assume if they were to prey on owls, they would definitely prey on these little owlets. Absolutely. What type of animals would actually eat owls?
So a lot of animals probably would eat an owl. A great horned owl, a red-tailed hawk, any bigger bird of prey would eat an owl. Now, they wouldn't be able to get into their nesting box or nesting cavity. When I think about animals like that could prey on them, I'm thinking about what? A weasel. I'm thinking skunk, but skunks aren't going to take the energy to climb up a tree. But a weasel would. And so one of them, the mother or the father, would probably be in there with them at all times and protecting them. So I do not think they would ever leave them alone. So at this stage for sure.
There were also a couple of questions about the hole size of the nest box or even the cavities. It seems like that hole is so small for those birds. How do they ever fit in those holes?
I know. And we have one here for Screech. And when I saw it and the size of the hole, I thought there's no way. But remember, he's only 4 ounces. And he is a very healthy, fed on a regular basis owl. Owls in the wild might weigh a little bit less. And so remember, they're just feathers and bones and a little bit of fat tissue. And so they actually can get into small spaces. When we got him and the rehabilitator saw the enclosure that we had, which basically we got it from chewy.com. It's a large dog kennel, one of those kind everyone gets when they get a puppy, but it's a really big one. And I was so excited and so like, look at this. This is amazing. And you know how there's the little black squares, you know, they're maybe 2 inches by 3 inches. She started laughing and she's like, oh, he's going to get out of that. I was like, what? There's no way. He's much bigger. She's like, oh, you kidding? He'll get out of that. So we had to take black screening, like screening for windows, and wrap the whole thing with zip ties and everything. And in the very beginning, he was bored and he scratched a hole through that screening and got out several times. And in fact, I got a text from our custodian at 6 o'clock in the morning one morning and said, hey, just to let you know, the Screech owl is sitting on the back of the chairs in, it's like a living room and in the lodge. And I was like, oh, I'll be right over. And there he was, just sitting there. Fortunately, he's well trained. He's very easy to get on the glove, and we were able to take care of it. But that happened several times. And on those areas, we had to actually get metal screening. So it's amazing what small area they can come in and out of.
So that actually answers one of our other questions of, it sounds like owls will enlarge or adjust a cavity or something if they need to get through whatever they need to get through.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. So you were saying there's been quite a few questions about how did you get Screech? I know you mentioned a little bit at the beginning. There was also a comment about they had found a Screech owl on the ground near a dirt road, not injured, but it disappeared a day later. Is there anything, so if you find an owl in the wild that you think may need a rehabilitation center, is there anything that you can do, or what was Screech's situation?
Really good question. And I from the real rehabilitator, which is the Milton Raptor Center, says this is very common, especially with Screech owls, is that when they're ready, they think they're ready to leave the nest and they fly down. So, you know, they can't necessarily get back up, and the parents take care of them down the ground for a while until they're really able to do the flying. Very easy for them to become prey, and quite often they waddle over to roads and get hit or get injured. Screech, I gather, was found on the edge of a road, probably got maybe hit by a car a little bit. Let me pop out of here. This wing, the left wing, is actually has had to have surgery. So its shoulder was injured enough. And this is why we have him. He could not live on his own. He could not hunt. He cannot fly very well. He is considered flightless. Now, if we put him somewhere, would he flutter down to the ground? Absolutely. When he got out of his enclosure, did he flutter down to the couch? Yep. But could he go from here and fly up somewhere? No. So his wing is whereas this side, oh, I'm sorry, buddy. This side is nice and smooth to his body, whereas the left wing is actually drooped down, and you can see it actually sticking out back here. So he is flightless, and the rehabilitator actually did training with him, made him really easy to handle. And that's why we have him. Did
So
that answer that question?
that totally answered that question.
We find one. So such a hard question with wildlife. My general advice to people, if they find a wild animal, baby, whatever in the wild, leave it alone. You know, unless you absolutely know it is really injured, leave it alone. You could keep your eye out on it, come back the next day. If it's gone, you know that its mama or daddy was nearby, its parents were nearby. For example, oftentimes people find baby deer all in this meadow or wherever, all curled up, sleeping, all by itself. Oh my gosh, it's all by itself. Well, its mother is really close by and she's watching, she's eating, she's foraging, but she's got her eye on that baby and she'll come back. Now, if a couple of days go by and that baby is still there, you might want to call the DNR and say, what do we do? My guess is the DNR is going to say, let it be. So, you know, follow the DNR's direction. And if it's something that they think needs to be rehabilitated or whatever, they'll help you find the right spot. For raptors, we defer to the Milton Raptor Rehabilitation Center, and Amy Pico down there is fabulous and helps us out. She does a checkup on our birds twice a year just to make sure, you know, we're doing a good job and making sure they're healthy. Obviously with Screech, something happened, someone picked it up, brought it home and called Amy and was like, what do we do? And she's like, well, bring it over. And something like a rehabilitation center, with a lot of them, is they'll do some rehabilitation if it needs to happen and then get that animal back out into the wild. With those animals that can't go back out into the wild, like Screech, then homes are found for education purposes. You do have to have a federal permit and a state permit. There's a lot of process to have wild animals. You can't just take it and go, oh, I'll raise it myself. That is not permitted. So we do have a federal permit and we also have a state of Michigan permit. So good questions, good questions. Let's see what else we have. I'm not sure exactly the time.
We've got about, I think I see about 7 minutes left until we're at 11.
Okay.
So we've had so many great questions. Thank you guys.
I love it. So let's go this. Oh, okay. So someone had said they heard a screech owl. They could hear, they actually heard the trill. So there are actually several sounds a screech owl makes. The most common is the trill, or it's also called a tremulo. And it is the one that they use when they're saying to their family members, hey, I'm over here, and this is where I am. And I want you to hear this. One more time. Now that you've heard that, I bet you're saying to yourself, I heard that before. Oh my gosh, we have eastern screech owls right here in our neighborhood, because sometimes they are in neighborhoods. So I want you to try it right now. It's easy to make the sound. It's just kind of like a gurgle in your back of your throat. It's kind of like a. Are you trying it? Good. I'm so glad. The other sound a screech owl makes is one that's called a whinny. And it honestly sounds like a horse is whinnying. It sounds like this. I don't have a recording, but it sounds like this. It's a little scary sounding when you're walking through the woods at night. You're like, oh, what is that? That is the owl, the eastern screech owl, saying, hey, this is my territory, not yours, my territory. So it's really talking to the other screech owls saying, hey, this is where my family and I hang out. You go find your own spot. Oopsie. Then there's one more sound unless you were very close to an owl, and it's the clapping of its beak. And I can do it with my teeth. I bet you could do it with your teeth too. Clap, clap, clap with your teeth. Go ahead. Nice job. So that is, hey, you are too close. I'm not happy. Back off. That's what that means. So in the beginning, Screech used to do that with us all the time. And now Screech doesn't do it with us at all. So now if someone new came up to his enclosure and said, was like, I don't know, touching the enclosure, he would definitely probably say that. But right now, during this time period, there's not that many people that Screech sees, just a handful of us. So he's pretty used to that. So that's really exciting because honestly, out in the wild, you're going to hear the owl long before. And it's really cool. You can go to just Google the sounds of owl, or go to the Cornell lab, ornithology lab, and look up sounds of all kinds, barred owls, great horned owls, all kinds of owls, and hear them. And then you'll start noticing how many owls you have, probably not very far from where you live.
So there was a question in the comments of, this is the mating season for eastern screech owls, correct? Or is it for most owls?
Not for eastern screech owls. Breeding season starts in middle of March. So they were going to breed in March and then lay eggs about a month later. They're going to incubate those for like 34 days, and then the nesting period is another 30 days. So it's several months of that breeding until you're nesting and ready to go. Once they do mate for life. So once they've found their mate, that's their partner for life, unless something happens. So pretty cool.
So when they do mate, do they have a particular sound? Do they use the trill, or do they use probably not the whinny, because if that's a warning,
right?
Do they have a mating sound?
I don't know. Oh. That is a very good question. I would guess it's the trill, but somebody with more knowledge of the breeding of their breeding process would know better than I.
Probably the Cornell Ornithology Lab will have that call on their website, is my guess.
Great information from the Cornell Ornithology Lab. You can even become a member and learn all kinds of things.
And we had one other question about males and females. So we know that baby owls are called owlets. Mm-hmm. Do we call male or boy owls something different than we call the female or girl owls?
Oh, my word. Great question. And again, I don't know that answer. So like with a chicken, you've got a hen and the boy chicken.
the roosters?
The roosters, thank you. A rooster. So hens and roosters. I don't know that if you refer to wild birds with the same nomenclature as that. Good question. Someone's Googling it right now. Throw it into chat when you got that answer.
And do they have different colors if they're male versus female? Is there any way for us to tell a difference between a male eastern screech owl and a female eastern screech owl?
No, the coloration, whereas some birds do have a very distinctive coloration difference, with the owls, it does not. So, yeah, oftentimes, like I'm thinking of turkeys, totally different, not totally different, but the female turkey is definitely kind of a more plain color. It's smaller, whereas the male turkey has those feathers that's like attracting female turkeys. Not that I'm aware of. Now, I think there's a little bit difference in size, but the coloration would be the same.
Well, I think we're about, oh, we just had,
Okay.
according to Google, they normally just call them male and female owls. So,
Okay,
and babies
good.
are owlets. So we're getting close to our time. We've had so many great questions today.
Up with one other thing is that in general, let's think about the things that make a bird a bird. So a bird has feathers, it has wings, it has a beak, it lays eggs, it's a hard shell egg. They are endothermic, meaning they are warm-blooded. They create the heat with inside of them, and they're a vertebrate, meaning they have a backbone. So those are the features of an owl or of a bird that makes it a bird. So,
thank you, Amy. And
you are
Google
so
has
welcome,
helped
Helen.
us again. And I will just give me 1 second. Google has helped us again. Paul is telling us on Facebook that the males and females will duet with their trill when they are courting or mating, or excuse me,
Oh,
courting. I shouldn't say mating. And so thank you for letting us know that, Paul. So yes, they do the trill. So we need to listen for that trill in March, correct?
yes, March, April, May, even probably depending on where you are and where you are on the eastern coast or eastern part of the United States. If you're in warmer areas, I'm going to guess it would be early March, but up here, I'm going to guess closer to April, maybe even into May.
And I
So
know we have many more questions, but I think Amy has put up their Facebook as well as their website, as well as their Instagram. So if you have any more questions, send them Amy's way. Send them to the Battle Creek Outdoor Education Center. They are very knowledgeable there.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Ellen. And thank you everybody out there for learning with us. We hope we do it again with you.